Military Handbook 288, detailed requirements. Military Handbook reviewing and acceptance of engineering drawing package, Department of Defense, approved for public release, distribution unlimited. Military Handbook 228B supersedes 28A MC of 14 January 1991. Um, 21. Chapter 5, detailed requirements, reviewing the correct materials, mechanical specification, specifications, DoD Standard 100, make sure the material specifications are listed on the drawing, check material specifications, ensuring requirements such as class, grade, type is specified, ensuring activity specifications are used, ensure the material specification correctly identifies the shape required for such as bar, sheet, rod, or tubing, the tolerance, surfacing, finishing, given on the specification. Commercial item must agree to those shown on the drawing are non-machine dimensioned. Tolerance or surface furnish given on the specification of the commercial item must agree with those shown on the non-machine dimensioned. Evaluate the qualities regardless of the plating or painting, welding, or hardening. Industrial standard stock materials must be specified when practical. Ensure the proper material is used in die form parts. Some heat treated materials are not particular for the dyeing. Some heat treated materials are not practical for dyed formatting. Other materials are suitable aging while hardening. Requirements ensuring material has been specified in proper condition to facilitate machining operations. Shift the type of raw material compatible with the processing machine. Technical stress requirements direct contract with dissimilar materials. Check the drawing notes for the heat treatment, hardness, and specification requirements. Casting and forging. Check the following items. Ensure that there are separate drawings for the roughing, casting, and forging for the finished parts. Make sure the drawing specifications type of the forging and casting to be used. Ensure the drawing specifically draft allowance. Specified tolerance may be compatible with the type of casting, forging intended use. The datum planes must be specified. Ensure that the location of the dimension tooling points are specified, and dimensions drafting surface must be taken over the molded lines. Duplicated dimensions should not be shown on both rough and finished parts of the drawing unless other. Duplicated dimensions should not be shown on both or rough and finished part of the drawing unless one of the dimensions is shown as a reference. Ensure that all grain direction of the forging is indicated on the line on the drawing. Ensure that all materials include alloys are properly specified in DoD Standard 100. Ensure the drawing specifications, parting lines of casting. Ensure the drawing show location dimension of the test components of the forging or casting. Ensure the inspection procedures are specified in the casting and forging shown on the drawing. Mechanical specifications of the DoD Standard 100. The general requirements check the fits between all mating parts and ensure the maximum tolerance buildup will allow the parts to assemble and operate within interference. Check to ensure that the features, dimension required for the special tooling are identified, that the special tooling are identified in the engineering drawing package. All machining requirements such as chamfers, countersinks, counterbores, radii must be properly defined and specified. Check to ensure all mating holes for the connection hardware, such as rivets, bolts, are within tolerance limits. 51321 thread data. In addition, with specified requirements in ANSY 14.6, check thread data for the following. Ensure that the general purpose of the pipe threads are not used as pressure seals. General purpose pipe threads require the sealing compound. Di-seal pipe threads do not require sealant. And to see ANSI B120.3, ANSI B121, ensure adequate thread engagement. Bolt must be long enough to provide sufficient thread engagement for the washer nuts and satisfy and safety wire as applicable. Thread a designation appropriation selected of the thread, the tolerance classes, resolution classes, the fit of the threads, of the part, and use of the thread inserts, installation notes. Ensure the first thread is countersunk and chamfered. Check the uniformity develop depth of tap drilled thread depth for the greater efficiency in the production. Blind tap holes should be avoided if possible. Ensure the threaded nomenclature format is correct. Spring data in addition with the specification requirements for the ASI Y143 checking spring data for the following information. Ensure that the drawing specify the type of springs to be used. Whenever possible, springs to conform to accepted government industrial specification standards should be used. When non-standard springs are used, ensure the drawing depicts the wire diameter, meaning spring diameter, spring rate, unstressed length, stressed length, and finish. The gear data, in addition with specification requirements for the ASY 1471, ASI 1472, check the gear data on the following. Ensure the drawing specification of the type of the gears to be used. Whenever possible, the gears to conform to the accepted government industrial specification standards shall be used. Non-standard gears are used and ensure the drawings depict their pitch, diameter, hexal, angle, pressure, angle, shaft diameter, thickness, material used, finish, and any special lubrication requirements. Checking the bearing for the following information. Bearing data for the following information. Ensure the drawing describes the types of bearing to be used and their related life whenever the possible the bearings are to conform with accepted government industrial standards. The specifications should be used whenever non-standard bearings are used. Ensure that the drawings would describe the dimensions, low rating, life rating, and material requirements, speed lubrication requirements. Sheet metal data, check the minimum band allowance for the dimension part of the form of the sheet metal drawing should be shown a dimension from the outside molded lines to eliminate the need for the calculation drawing should be used for the true dimensions of the band of allowance instead of the angled in dimension. See ASI Y145 completed with the sheet metal weldment parts and should be replaced by the die investment casting whatever the practical evaluated stamping, extruding, the fabricating in lieu of the casting of the forging, ensuring that the welding requirements conform with the applicable standards, plating and finishing data, checking the plating, heating and finishing requirements of the filing, ensuring the balance and thickness in accordance with the applicable plating specifications. Drawing must specify the dimensions, surface finish and waveness lay requirements of plated parts, and previous metal plating requirements should be eliminated where practical to reduce the cost. Avoid plating on the selected portions of the parts whenever possible. Drawings must specifically if metal parts will be deoxide, anodized, or chemically filmed, or barrier coated, sacrificially coated, or treated with some other, or if more than one treatment being specified. Ensure that the treatments are applied in proper order. Check the drawings to make sure that the magnetic inspection is required of the high stress 10C. High stress heat treated parts of the low micro finish parts of the prior to the grinding. The drawing must indicate the if dimension applied before or after the plating is applied. Reviewing assembly drawings. Check for the following. Ensure the location of the nameplates are shown. Assembled drawing must show all peculiar assembly or adjustment instructions. Ensure that the assembly drawing after referring to all associated documents and drawings. There must be sufficient views to show the relationship between each part. Assembly parts and the number must be properly marked. Assembly drawings must show power and the input-output values and the applicable tolerance thereto. Ensure the inspection testing requirements are specified for the items depicted in the drawing. Assembled drawings must be identified in separable assemblies. Ensure the assembly drawings identify the depicting attaching hardware such as nuts, bolts, and rivets. Location, orientation, other parts should be shown. Ensure the tolerance buildups do not cause interference during the assembly, disassemble, or an operation. Ensuring the required quantities are correct. Assembled drawings must be depicted correctly, assembled in reference and dimension. Ensure that the reference designators used on the assembly drawings are used consistently on all associated drawings and related lists. The identification quantity of the parts shown in the assembly drawing must agree with the part list. Reviewing the detailed drawings is ASE and ASI Y143 check for the following. Detailed drawings must completely depict the entire of the part of the assembly shown. Ensure that there are sufficient views to adequately define the item, and ensure that all dimensions are taken for the physical features of the ASI 14.5. Detailed drawings should not use the dimension or hidden lines. ASI 14.5 Ensure the datum plan. That is your view drawing. Your detailed drawings do not show dimensions or hidden. Do not show hidden lines. Dimensions of hidden lines. Ensure the datum planes are properly defined. See ANSI Y 14.5. Ensure mono detailed drawing depicted from only one item. Reviewing the drawings of electronic system general. The DoD standard 100 ANSI Y 14.15. Review all drawings applicable. Drawings electronic and electronic system for the following information. Ensure the wires are properly identified by the size, specification, and coding. Sleeving must be properly identified. Sleeving should be over connections to ensure adequate protection where as possibility of shorting and exists. Check notes for the correcting soldering specification. Check the floating connectors are used only where as necessary. Check the conforming component whenever required to provide the adequate resistance to the leakage. Check the drawings show the polarities of the diodes and crystals, the orientation of the transistors. Other parts of this be specified within the respective fixed reference point. Check the hermetic sealing of the connectors where are required. Check to see if there are requirements or lacing, sleeving, or wrapping are identified. And analyzing the availability of the assembly drawings, wire drawings, printed wire board drawings, schematic drawings for the compatibility. Each drawing or diagram should refer to all the related drawings or diagrams. All reference designators must be consistent. Analyze, evaluate the service rating on all connectors, and ensure that all connectors are capability. And analyze, evaluate all components of the safety. Ensure the adequate adequate test requirements are provided for all levels of electrical and electronic assembly drawings. Wire diagram, wire harness drawings, and check the following. Wire diagrams, wire harnessing drawings should be used when appropriate. The DoD standard 100 when in the physical arrangement of the wire rating. Components should be consistent with their layout of the associated drawings. Ensure the component terminals are identified in the wiring drawings, and drawing must conform to the ANSI Y1415. Ensure that it uses reference designators is consistent with the related drawings. To ensure that the wire diagrams identify all input and output signals. Ensure that the wire diagram identifies the functions of all test points. Ensure that the drawing identifies the ground, shows their location. While the wire diagram must refer to the associated assembly of the schematic drawings. Make sure that the drawings detail the use of the wire numbers of the color coded that their use of the inconsistent with that of the related drawings and associated lists. The schematic logic and interlocking diagrams. Check for the following. Ensure the diagrams are prepared for each of the subunit. Diagrams must identify the inputs, outputs, and show an applicable tolerance. Ensure that the parts are shielded well or grounded. Ensure that the diagram shows the directional alignment of all components and consistent with what is shown in associated drawings. This is especially important with the components that are affected by polarity, such as batteries and diodes and rectifiers. Separately, replacement assembly must be identified by an appropriate reference designator and ensure that all components are identified by the reference designator type and numbered by the pair. EEE standard 315. Ensure the schematic drawings show the capacity rating of the safety devices such as fuses and circuit breakers. Various ratings and tolerances must be shown for all components. Ensure the schematic drawings identify the functions of the test and points. Logical symbols must be in accordance with the IEEE standard 91. Ensure the electrical symbols are used to the IEEE standard 315. Ensure the schematic drawings refer to the associated drawing list. Ensure terminals, relays, plugs, and other connections are identified. Printed wire boarding. Check the following and analyze, evaluate the printed wire design for the conformity to the applicable specifications. Printed wire fabrication must conform to the applicable specifications. Ensure the drawing depicting the wire boarding and details and identifying all components drawing must conform into Section 4 of the Military Standard 275. Drawings must be laid out on a grid system. Both sides of the wiring drawing, including reduction dimensions, must be shown on the same wiring board drawing, ensuring that front to back registration points are defined and precisely located and adequately controlled. Ensure that the marking information depicted on the wire boarding drawing is consistent with which is shown in the associated drawings. Ensure that the wire boarding diagram makes references to the corresponding assembly drawing. The board assembly board and assembly number must be the same as the number shown on the corresponding assembly drawing, and the drawing must specify depicting conform coding when required. Reference designator shown on the board drawing must be consistent with those shown on the assembly drawing and associated lists. Ensure that the wire board drawing notes include the subunit prefix. The wire board drawing should not contain subunit numbers, ensuring the masking is not used in this guide for the whole locations. Make sure the dimension of the tolerance for all holes are shown, and see DoD Standard 100. Ensure the master pattern drawing is laid out in the per DoD Standard 100, and when wire board diagrams are produced in digital form, ensure that their description and format are in accordance with the ASI IPC D350. Separate reviews must be shown on double-sided multi-layered boards. Ensure that the wire and boarding drawings should include adequate quality assurance provisions in the manufacturer for the item that they depict. Test coupons must be shown on the master drawing, artwork, and production master. Ensure all circuit patterns agree with the schematic drawing. Ensure that fixed portions of the printed wire boarding are used in reference to define location, width, and dimension of the conductors. Ensure that jumper wires are eliminated on the production drawings. Ensure that the master drawings contain the note for the manufacturing purpose of this drawing shall not be reproduced to or reproduced. For the manufacturing purpose of this drawing shall not be reproduced to or for the reproducible that is made for other than a stable base material. Reviewing control drawings, specification control drawings, criteria for the designation of the quality of the specific control drawings and the item depicted must meet the following criteria. It must be an unmodified commercial type available for the government industrial on an unrestricted basis, for the item must not have been developed for the use of the equipment represented by the drawing package under the review. The manufacturer's name, address, identification codes, and items identification numbers must be shown to the SCD. The drawing must list two or more known sources unless otherwise search of vendor data lists item determined that there is only one source of supply. Ensure non-restrictive markings such as limited rights and copyright legends, etc., as are shown in the specific control drawing. Reviews of the specific control drawing. Analyze specific control drawings for the following information. They shall disclose as applicable item configuration, dimensions, envelope, mounting, mating dimensions, interfacing dimension characteristics, and their limited. So the special control drawings must show inspect acceptance of the testing requirements, performance, reliability, maintainability, environmental, and other functional requirements as necessary to the ensure identification and adequate competitive procurement of the interchangeable item. If an electrical or an electronic or other engineering circuit is involved, the schematic contactor or other appropriate drawing shall be included but referred by the own to be by the drawing to provide sufficient information to mark the external connections. The specific control drawing numbers of the administrator of the control number shall not be marked on the part of the specific control number are used to identify the item on the other drawings and other documentations. Qualification, testing, and items in advance of the procurement of the action is not prerequisite for including an item on a specific control device or specific control drawing. Which one number was that one? Specific control drawings are administrative control numbers and shall not be marked on the part. The specific control drawing are used to identify the item on other drawings and documents. Qualification, testing an item in advance of the procurement action is not a prerequisite for including an item or a specific control drawing. An decision cannot be made by the informing availability of the manufacturer item, and the activity submitting of the drawing should be contacted to verify that these items meet the criteria of the specific control drawing. All sources of the supply should be checked and to verify that parts and numbers listed on the drawing meet the requirements of the specific control drawing, that items that are currently available, and that the items are currently available. The manufacturer parts numbers becomes the item's identification number and is the connotation of the specification. Notation specific control drawing. Identification of suggested sources or of supply must appear on the drawing per DoD Standard 100. Source of control drawings. The criteria for designation of source of control drawing is defined as an item which is procurable only for the certain vendors for the reason for such as the following. A vendor has specifically technical product or material which will make his product work in a system where others will not, and the key elements must be identifiable, and the vendors and specification critical application substitution vendors shall not be used with the prior testing evaluation approval. Critical factors may include the performance, installation, interchangeable reliability must be spelled out on the drawing. Review of the specific control source of control drawings. Reviewing the source of control drawings requirements are identical for those of the source of control drawings, except for the following differences. Items must be tested pre-qualified for the inclusion of the source of control drawing. Reviewing a source of control drawing when the source of control drawing requires the identical of those of a special control drawing, except for the following differences. The items must be tested for qualified inclusion of the source of control drawing. The drawing should include the following notes. The only item that is described in the drawing which procured from the vendors listed hereon is approved by the name and the address of cognizant design activity for the use of applicants specified hereon, and substitute items shall not be used in without approval by the name and cognizant design activity or in the name of the government procuring activity. Identification for the approved sources of supply herein is constructed as in guaranteed or present or continued availability is the source of supply for the item, description of the item, or description of the drawing. The drawing shall list the heading approved sources of supply, the manufacturer's name, addresses, identification code, and the parts and the name of each item that has been tested and approved for the use of specification application stated on the drawing. Whenever another vendor item is tested, qualified, and stated application, when a new critical application is found, and all vendors' items are cited on the drawings are as approved for the use of the new critical application, but the drawing may be revised to such new vendors for application. Each new vendor added must be approved for all stated applications. The source of control drawing must be part of the identification numbers and are subsequent used to identify the item in the other drawings or documents when more than one vendor is listed on the source of control drawing. For the items of the repairable and the repair parts are not interchanged between one vendor's items and another, and each of the vendor's items shall be assigned for the unique suffix of the source of control drawing, ensuring the source of control drawing numbers are marked on the paper on the part. The source of control numbers becomes the items parts number C, the DoD standard 100. The drawing shows including the notation source of control drawing, the DoD standard 100. The drawing must list the qualification, performance, inspections, approval procedures for the new item's additional source, the selected item drawings. The selected item drawings and disclosure requirements for the are identical to those of the specific control drawings, except for the differences are located and listed below. The drawing must contain the notation of selected item drawing. See the DoD standard 100 to complete. The details of the selection criteria shown will be described, such as a fit, tolerance, performance, or reliability. The selected item drawing shown shall contain the sufficient information to identify the item before the selection. The part of the number, the modification name, or the address identification number shall be included in the drawing package. The original part number must be obliterated and selected, and the item identification number shall become the part of the number of the selected item itself. See the DoD standard 100. This is considered a part alteration. Altered item drawings and altered item item disclosure requirements are identical to those of the specific control drawing. Selected item drawings are except for the differences listed below. The drawing shall include information necessary to identify the item prior to the alteration, including the original part of the number, the name, the address of the original source, the name and the address of the source needed for the furnish, and if in the original part of the government industry standard for the item of the vendor activity, the document is referred to as to the vendor as data shall be submitted along with the altered item of the drawing, and if the vendor originally designs data is unobtainable, the Altered item drawing shall contain sufficient information to be identified in that the item prior to the alteration. Not the notation altered item drawing must appear on the drawing and see DoD standard 100. The original part number must be obliterated. The altered item identification number shall become the part of the number of the altered item. See DoD standard 100. Reviewing the list associated with the engine drawing package. The engineering drawing package parts of the list. See the DoD standard 100. Checking the following is part of the part list as are used to make sure that they are formatted and is correct. See that the part lists are used to ensure that the part list numbers are correct. And if an integral part list is used, ensure that the format is correct and refer to the ASI Y1434. Ensure that the part identified the numbers are correct, including the item controlled by the military specification. Find the numbered reference designators used for the part listing must be consistent with those of the shown on the associated drawing. The part list may be revised in accordance with the DoD Standard 100. The part list must specify quantities on all items and they identified by the as are required by the AR. Bulk items must be identified by the discrete identifier and instead of the quantity unit measures must be specified. Ensured as is required by the AR. As is required, AR quantities are used only where they are appropriate. Items that are not adequately defined by the government or industrial specifications must be depicted on a drawing. Ensure that the parts depicted in the specification, control sources, control alterated items, and selected on the item drawings are properly identified per DoD Standard 100. When the part lists are produced on the automatic drawing data processing system, the Edp'S ensures that they are in format specified in DoD Standard 100. Ensure that that every item on the drawing is called out on the part list, whether verifying the military industrial standard part numbers are correctly identified by the parts being used. Ensure that the part its nomenclature is consistent with that the use of the higher assembly data list, the DLs, and see the DoD standard 100. Check the following and ensure that the format is correct. Ensure that the data list contains all applicable drawings and documents and associated listing. Ensure that the data list and the numbers are correct. Ensure that the data list is revised by the per DoD Standard 100. And ensure the documents are sequenced per DoD Standard 100. Ensure that the data lists are prepared for each of the major assemblies. Some assembly and other unit is required. Ensure that the list nomenclature is consistent with that used in the assembly drawing. Index list, the ILs, the CDOD Standard 100. Check the following. Ensure that the format is correct. Ensure that the index listing number is correct per DoD Standard 100. Ensure the documents are sequenced in per DoD Standard 100 and ILS. Index listing must be prepared for each of the major assemblies of the system as required for the contractual instrument in effect. Ensure that each of the index of the list contains all applicable data listings and index listings. Ensure that the nomenclature of the index listing agrees with those of the assembly drawing. Chapter 6 notes. The section contains information of a general explanatory nature that may be helpful but is not mandatory. Intended for the use of information contained in this handbook and provides guidance for the review of the drawing review personnel. The data is in the handbook is not intended to be checking the list of non-experienced review personnel to check their drawings with. Some extra subject term, keyword listing, assembly, associated diagrams, drawings, sources, specification, and specification controls. Source controls, specification controls. The appendix is preparing